Many soldiers became so rich that they decided to return home, and the cities that rebelled were fined.
They became so rich that they didn't feel the need to fight anymore? What? Continuing the Italian Wars.
Louis XII's army had been defeated at Garigliano in his attempt to reconquer the Kingdom of Naples, but even after this loss, the Kingdom of France was still seen as the strongest power in Italy. One state that hoped to capitalize on this strength was Venice, who with its slow and meticulous expansion into the Italian mainland, became an objective for both foes and allies, as alliances began to shift in the chaotic political chessboard of Italy. Welcome to our video on the first stage of the War of the League of Cambrai and the battles of Agnadello and Ravenna. France, Spain, the Holy Roman Empire and others were anxious.
Spounsha, I feel it. Spounsha. Guys, you should donate to me.
France and Spain confronted each other on the river Garigliano. Another battle for the control of the Holy See was destabilizing the Eternal City. Alexander VI had died in August 1503 and was succeeded by Pius III, a choice that was meant as a compromise between the rival factions in Rome. After less than a month, the sick and old Pius died, and a new pope was elected, the powerful Giuliano della Rovere, who took the name Julius II. Pope Alexander's death meant that his son Cesare Borgia suddenly lost his protector. He would be arrested by Pope Julius and sent to Spain. Venice had not been much involved in Italian politics following Louis's conquest of Milan, as they were defending against the Ottomans, solicited to raid Italy by the Prior Duke of Milan, Ludovico. After 3 years of war against the Sublime Porte, the
crazy because I'm reacting to the rise of the Ottomans. One of my comments actually, they pointed out how I'm like reacting to like two series that are kind of intertwined. So that's gonna be cool to see. Although I am a bit behind. The next episode of my is going to be on the siege of Constantinople, 1453. So
that emerged after the fall of the Borgias, expanding their territory. The new pope was an energetic and dominant figure, and after ascending to the throne, he proposed a plan to Venice to expel the French out of Lombardy. However, the Republic decided to profit from Louis's defeat at Garigliano and the weakness of the papal military. Julius vehemently protested the annexations in Romagna and spent 2 years assembling an army. In 1506, he occupied Perugia and Bologna to block the Venetian expansion. He also negotiated with the major powers of Europe. The talks culminated with the Treaty of Blois in 1504 between Louis of France and Philip von Habsburg, where it was decided that the Venetian mainland would be divided between the two. Louis, following the defeat at Garigliano, also struggled with problems in northern Italy. He had to deal with disgruntled Swiss mercenaries, who following the Battle of Novara had occupied the city Bellinzona and now created problems for the French army.
Yo, Switzerland. Yo, it's so odd hearing Switzerland not being neutral. But I forgot that this is like this around this time, like they were like doing things. So weird. Switzerland is actually doing things. So weird to say,
was forced to relinquish
let alone think about,
as a form of payment to stop them raiding Lombardy, while other Swiss attempts to occupy more territory were repelled. In Spain, the political situation changed in 1504 with the death of Isabella of Castile, which left Ferdinand as the governor of Castile. In spring 1506, their daughter Juana and her husband Philip Habsburg entered Castile to take control of the kingdom, but the latter died in September. Ferdinand, in the meantime, had travelled to Naples to take better control of the kingdom, reforming the local army, removing Gonzalo de Cordoba from the position of viceroy, and pardoning many barons who had been loyal to France.
You know what? is weird to me, how Naples takes up like more than half of the Italian peninsula and clearly is the most powerful Italian state, yet it wasn't Naples who unified Italy. Very interesting. Very, very interesting how Naples didn't try to conquer the rest of the Italian peninsula.
Ferdinand and Louis met at Savona in...
Why is that though? Why is that? If you can answer that question, that would be nice.
June 1507, where they laid the groundworks for a coalition against Venice. Louis wanted to retake the lands that had once belonged to the Duchy of Lombardy and punish Venice for their lack of help against the Swiss, while Ferdinand wished to regain control over coastal cities in Puglia. It was planned that Maximilian of Habsburg would also join this coalition. On the 10th of December 1508, the states hostile to Venice created the League of Cambrai with the official goal of expelling the Ottoman Turks out of Europe. But to reach this goal, the League claimed, the greedy state of Venice had to be destroyed for sowing division in the Christian world. The members of the League were England, Hungary, France, Spain, the Emperor, Ferrara, Mantua, and Florence, while the Pope was initially not present. Venice, surrounded on all sides, made attempts to dissuade the Papal State from joining by offering some cities in Romagna, but was instead met by an excommunication. After considering an alliance with the Ottomans, Venice decided to adopt a strategy of attrition characteristic of the Italian school of thought, expecting that the many conflicting interests in the League would make it implode and engaging one enemy at a time.
You know, and you're not wrong. And they are not wrong. That's the funny part about this.
Venice and the League started in April 1509. The French vanguard, commanded by the governor of Milan, Charles d'Amboise, occupied Treviglio on the 15th, defeating a small force there, but retreated a few days later. Louis entered Milan on the 1st of May at the head of an army of around 40,000 men. Of around 30,000 was commanded by Niccolò Orsini and Bartolomeo d'Alviano.
Hey, that's really sizable for Venice, holy crap.
The first following the agreed strategy of attrition, with the latter appealing for more aggressive conduct of the war. On the 9th of May, Louis traversed the River Adda with his army and occupied Cassano and Rivolta right in front of the Venetian army, but they did not attack each other. On the morning of the 14th of May, the French army headed towards Crema. Orsini decided to move his camp to the castle of Pandino, where the supplies from Crema and Cremona converged, and after reaching it, he waited there for the rearguard. The rearguard, composed mainly of infantry and a few cannons, was attacked south of Agnadello by the French vanguard of Swiss infantry, artillery, and heavy cavalry at around 1 o'clock, under a light rainfall. The Venetians retreated behind a dried-up riverbed, from where they repelled the assaults of the enemy cavalry first and pikemen later. The difficult terrain, composed of vineyards and muddy terrain up the slopes, made it difficult for the heavily armoured enemies to assault their positions. D'Alviano, who commanded the rearguard, was at Pandino and asked Niccolò Orsini for reinforcements, but he was ordered to only cover the retreat of his men. When D'Alviano arrived at the battlefield, he discovered that part of the infantry, not wanting to suffer the enemy bombardment, had jumped over the riverbed and charged the cannons. The French cavalry...
No, I don't want to say that's bad, because I don't think anyone wants to get their freaking heads blown off by a cannonball. And that's a real thing, by the way. Or a limb. Oh my goodness gracious me, a limb. Or their freaking bowels. You know what I mean? Interesting. Let's see what happens.
They attacked their sides, cutting through the Venetian formation, but they themselves were charged by D'Alviano's men-at-arms, routing the enemy horsemen.
This is...
The French and Venetian army arrived. The Umbrian commander to attack the center, where the king himself was placed, and ordered a charge. However, reinforcements blocked D'Alviano's advance, turning the tide of the battle. Orsini would not send any more relief forces to the Venetian infantry, mainly composed of peasant militia, which was inexorably cut down or fled. The French cavalry, now reorganized, surrounded Dalviano and his men and forced their surrender after 3 hours of
That was a short but very back and forth battle.
The Venetians lost most of their rear guard, around a quarter of their infantry units, and about 30 cannons.
Wow!
The defeat was not total. Venetians, the morale hit
I mean, still a quarter? Woo!
taken by the army was significant, and Orsini lost a third of his men to desertion as he retreated all the way back to Mestre. Louis, who had suffered only light casualties, swiftly took control of the cities once held by the Dukes of Milan, all of them opening their doors at the sight of the French army.
That drip though.
Crema, Treviglio, Brescia, and Bergamo were occupied as agreed with the other members of the League, and the king waited at Veneto's border for his allies, sacking Peschiera.
That drip though, that drip is immaculate.
Alfonso d'Este quickly took control of the Polesine and Rovigo, and the papal forces under Gonzaga conquered Assola and Lonato. Venice decided to cut its losses and ordered their officials in Romagna and Apulia to leave, so when the papal and Spanish armies reached their designated territories, they surrendered. This took away the reason for the Pope and Spain to continue the conflict, alleviating the pressure from the south, but Venetian attention quickly turned north. At the beginning of June, the imperial army entered Italy and overran most of Friuli. The Venetians withdrew their garrisons from the other cities in Veneto, while Verona, Vicenza, Padua, Feltre, and Belluno surrendered to the emperor, assuming they would enjoy the same privileges as the free imperial cities. Only Treviso remained loyal and was besieged by the imperials, but an unexpected hand came to help Venice. The rural population of the Republic's landholdings, harassed by the occupying forces and worried to lose influence to the oligarchies in the cities, rebelled in favor of the Republic. Bands of peasants roamed the countryside, attacking smaller detachments of enemy forces and offered intel on army movements.
Why in the world? Peasants? Peasants? What in the world? Peasants? Okay, peasants are coming in clutch. This is something that you don't hear often. Although, I recently just did a reaction to how a peasant army turned into an empire. So, but still, this is this is super entertaining. I ain't even gonna lie to you. This is really entertaining. I'm liking this.
He managed to enter Padua on the 7th of July with the help of citizens and captured the German garrison. This was followed soon after by the capture of Francesco Gonzaga, while the Habsburg continued to have problems in Friuli. The city of Padua was reinforced by the patricians of the Laguna, and their men bolstered the defenders to a total of 20,000 men, as Maximilian himself came to Padua with his army of 24,000 men, reinforced by French cavalry, and started the siege on the 10th of August. The artillery was effective at creating breaches, but each assault was repelled by the defenders during all of September.
Venice, you must live!
Maximilian lifted the siege with most of his army, as the lack of funds, trust, and coordination with the French contingent made it impossible to continue. Venice jumped on the opportunity and retook control of Vicenza, but French contingents stopped any attempt against Verona. On the 22nd of December,
Venice comeback?
A Venetian fleet that had harassed the Ferrarese riverbanks on the Po was bombarded by the precise artillery of Alfonso d'Este at Polesella. The loss of a number of vessels forced the Venetian to give up any pretense of influence in Ferrara, paving the way for an agreement with the Pope. Julius had by that point reached his objectives by imposing papal control on Umbria, Emilia, and Romagna, including Ravenna and Cervia, and was now worried about the powerful French state in Lombardy.
Bruh. No way you have the audacity to be worried, man.
It was no secret that Louis had planned to substitute the stubborn Pope with his minister, Cardinal d'Amboise, and so on the 24th of February 1510, the Pope signed a separate peace with Venice, revoking the excommunication. After the success that followed the siege of Padua, the Venetian Republic procured some much-needed breathing room as the invading armies returned to their bases in Lombardy and Verona for the winter. In May of 1510, the operations in Veneto picked up steam again. A French army, commanded by Chaumont, governor of Milan, advanced with the army of the Duke of Ferrara into the Polesine and retook Monselice, while another army commanded by the Imperial Rudolf von Anhalt with numerous French troops retook Vicenza and the cities at the foothills of the Alps. The Venetians, now commanded by Gianpaolo Baglioni, retreated to their defensive positions at Padua and Treviso, where they stalled their enemies.
At Papa John's,
However, once again, mistrust between the leaders of the League, contrasting interests, fear of the other becoming too powerful, and the passive resistance of the population stopped the operations. The French army retreated to Lombardy after the death of Cardinal d'Amboise to respond to military actions from the Pope against them, whereas the imperial contingent was pressured back to Verona and in the autumn would mostly dissolve. The Venetians retook most of their lost territory, returning to the status quo of the previous winter.
All that for nothing.
Having
Literally.
full control of Romagna, the Pope was now more worried about expelling the French out of Italy. Too powerful had the French king grown, and this had to stop. The first step was to
okay.
attack Alfonso d'Este, a long-time ally of the French, with whom the Pope had frictions over salt production in the area. Furthermore, the d'Este family also held the city of Ferrara, officially a papal fief, and territory the Pope wanted to rule. In the summer, the papal army attacked Ferrara on the pretense of trade conflict and occupied Modena, the second city of the duchy, while Julius indirectly attempted to subtract Milan and Genoa from the French. He had the Prince Bishop of Sion, Matthias Schina, petition the Swiss Diet to send an army to aid him against Alfonso d'Este,
Bro,
which would pass
it's so weird seeing Switzerland not neutral.
through Lombardy and attack the French. As they descended the Alps, the French army followed them, making it impossible to forage, forcing the Swiss to return to their mountains.
Yeah, bro, go back where you came from.
The 80-year-old Pope moved to Bologna to oversee his army, reinforced by Venetian and Spanish troops, while the French forces unsuccessfully attempted to conquer Bologna. The Pope counterattacked in the winter by taking Concordia and Mirandola, ruled by the Francophile Pico family, but when he tried to attack Ferrara, he was blocked by a French army. The following spring commenced by holding peace talks that did not come to fruition. Julius gave Modena to an imperial envoy to shield his position from French and imperial attacks, but the French army retook Concordia, and factions in Bologna rebelled, forcing the papal Venetian army to escape to Ravenna. On the retreat, the Allied army took some losses from the pursuing enemy cavalry, increasing the frictions among the leadership of the army that led to the assassination of one of the papal commanders. The pro-French
Whoa! Bro, you're supposed to be allies! You're supposed to be allies! What in the world?
Giulio family was reinstated in Bologna, and the French returned to Milan. Papal involvement in military and
Although,
matters.
I will say, I do understand. I get it. Balance of power. Balance of power. The thing that keeps the world going round and round and round. Balance of power!
Matters was not unusual for the Italian princes, but it was for the European kings, who considered the Pope to be on a higher spiritual level. For some years, the monarchs of Europe had alluded to the possibility of holding a meeting to reform the Catholic Church, as Julius's abundant use of both spiritual influence and military weapons opened him to attacks on an ecclesiastical plane. After having the French Church declare itself autonomous from the Pope, in September 1511, Louis had a group of French-friendly cardinals call a council in Pisa to reform the Church, with the not-so-subtle goal to have the Pope removed from his position. Julius managed to rally support from the Italian and Spanish cardinals, and in April 1512, he called the Fifth Lateran Council, stripping the one in Pisa of any legitimacy. On the political side, in October 1511, Julius organized the formation of a Holy League with Venice, Spain and England. The Pope also reached an agreement with the Swiss Confederacy, mediated by Cinna, obtaining access to their formidable mercenaries for the coming conflict, and also hiring them as his guard.
The Swiss Guard. They are not to be messed with. They are not to be messed with. You know what's interesting to me is how they're trained. They are trained for modern warfare. It's just like the Queen's Guard. They're trained for modern warfare, but they still carry around freaking pikes, which is interesting. But a lot of people have this misconception that like handed tip weapons. Bloody hell. I don't know what happened there. My camera just turned off. But a lot of people have this misconception that like handed weapons like spears, swords and all that, it's obsolete. Yeah. In most cases, sure. But people tend to forget that A, you just can't spray ammo or you'll waste it. B, there are plenty of cases where you will run out of ammo and you're gonna actually have to like fix bayonets or something like that. Like a lot of cases. I mean, I see close combat is still a real thing, like very much a real thing. Or your gun could jam, which happens a lot, right? So handling weapons like spears and all that stuff, I think spears would be kind of, yeah, bit much. Unless you're in a very close setting, even then, like a simple handgun is enough. Still, spears, bit much, but still, handling weapons, I wouldn't really say obsolete. They still can be quite useful. In fact, they could probably save your life if you're in a situation where your gun jams, runs out of ammo, something happens to your gun or something like that.
The Swiss army advanced to Milan in December, where they expected the city would revolt. But once there, their ranks broke during negotiations and they returned home. The newly appointed governor of Milan was the young Gaston de Foix, Duke of Nemours and nephew of King Louis. He had brought with him a great number of reinforcements from France and had confronted the Swiss incursion by staying close to them and hindering the gathering of supplies, like his predecessor Charmont had the previous year. Meanwhile,
honestly, I would love to see a reality where France controls all of Italy. That border will look so beautiful.
The papal army was joined by the Spanish one under Viceroy Ramon de Cardona coming from Naples, but it took them a month before they started any military action and laid siege to Bologna. De Foix took advantage of the slow Spanish actions and quickly moved back to Emilia with his army and reinforced the defenders, forcing Spanish retreat.
Ooh, Venice.
Eastern Lombardy, where a Venetian army had taken over Brescia and Bergamo, sparking rebellions in the region. Gaston, with a lightning march, defeated the Venetians at Valeggio and then reached the city.
Wow! That is mad!
And started one of the gravest sacks of the Italian War. Many soldiers became so rich that they decided to return home, and the cities that rebelled were fined.
They became so rich that they didn't feel the need to fight anymore? What? That is wild.
The Duke returned to Emilia to pursue the Spanish army. Cardona had been ordered to bide his time for combined attacks on multiple fronts, so he retreated deeper into Romagna. But when the French made an unsuccessful assault on Ravenna on the 9th of April, he was compelled to defend the Romagnolan stronghold.
Ed Bob Evan.
The French army was composed of around 13,000 cavalrymen, of which 3,000 were light cavalry or...
Bro, I love the French symbol. I wish the French flag was still like that. This symbol is just so sexy. I mean, just look at it, bro.
From Picardy, Gascony, Germany and Italy, alongside 50 cannons. the army was reinforced by the Duke of Ferrara's 300 men and cannons, which composed 2/3 of the French artillery. The combined Spanish Papal Army was composed of 8,000 cavalry, 13,000 infantry, and 24 cannons. On the morning of Easter Sunday, on the 11th of April, the Duke of Nemours ordered the French army to advance on a bridge built during the night and to head towards the Papal Hispanic camp. The League had fortified the camp, excavating a trench perpendicular to the river Ronco, which then bowed towards it and bladed carts with arquebuses that had been placed to protect the infantry. The Spanish were set up in 3 lines, with the heavy cavalry on
very
with artillery in
intriguing.
front and infantry to the right, while the light cavalry was placed behind, covering the right flank. The French placed their heavy cavalry on the left, infantry in the center, and light cavalry on the right in a half-crescent formation. The French army stopped in front of the Spanish line, waiting for the artillery bombardment to dislodge their adversaries from their positions. The Duke of Ferrara moved a number of his field artillery pieces to the far left of the French line, while d'Alegre moved 2 pieces to the opposite side of the river, from where he rained fire upon the exposed Spanish positions for 2 hours. Caught in the
Nasty.
infantry managed to partially cover themselves by laying on the ground, hoping to weather the storm and hold their defensible positions. But the heavy cavalry
Yeah,
was
that's not defensible. It's not defensible. Defensible. Yeah. Why am I not able to pronounce words? It's not defensible if you're having artillery rain down on you. You need artillery to be negated. Otherwise, it's pointless.
decimated, as they had nowhere to hide. Fabrizio Colonna, commander of the Papal cavalry, after his requests to attack were ignored, decided to charge the enemy men-at-arms as the fire drove him out from his position. As he did that, the Spanish infantry commander Navarro, who had wanted to sacrifice the cavalry in favor of his infantry, was approached by the French and German infantry contingents.
Okay.
They came under fire of the arquebuses on the carts, jumped the ruined defences, and entered into a fierce melee, whilst the Spanish light cavalry rallied out to silence the Ferrarese cannons. The Spanish men-at-arms were less disciplined and organised than their French counterparts, and had suffered more casualties following the bombardment, so they were no match.
Yep.
Meanwhile, on the other side of the battlefield, the French light cavalry routed their Spanish opposition. During the fight, the Ferrarese cannons continued to fire, mauling soldiers on both sides. When the Duke Alfonso d'Este was informed about this by a subordinate, he ordered enthusiastically to not stop firing, saying, "Fire wherever you want and without worry, my bombardiers, as you can't make mistake, because they are all enemies." The Spanish infantry held out against
She's not wrong.
pushing them back, while the Italians did the same against the Gascons, but they were soon charged and flanked by the French cavalry. The majority of the League's second line was forced to surrender, as was the Spanish cavalry riding to help with Colonna. The Spanish rearguard and the viceroy had by then retreated. When a contingent of Spanish infantry was retreating in good order, the Duke of Nemours charged against them, but was caught alone amid the Spanish line, where he was unsaddled and killed.
Damn. Oh,
People-
he got caught lacking.
Casualties were upwards of
Boy, you had
60%
one
of
job.
forces.
Ay,
Many of their
60%.
were captured,
Woo!
including the papal representative Cardinal de Medici, Prospero Colonna, and the Marquis of Pescara, Fernando d'Avalos, whilst the French lost around 20% of their men, but many of their commanders died, including the Duke of Nemours, Yves d'Alegre, and the infantry commanders. The high casualties have been attributed by historians to the unscrupulous use of cannons by the Duke of Ferrara.
Yeah. Oh, I 100%
After
bet.
the Battle of Ravenna, the city was sacked by Gascon and German footmen. The majority of the French army, now commanded by Jacques de la Palisse, retreated to Lombardy, awaiting orders, while a smaller contingent remained in Romagna to secure it. With the death of the young and fierce commander, the French army lost its initiative and cohesion. while the League counterattacked under the Pope's call of Fiori I Barbari, barbarians out. A Swiss mercenary army of 24...
It's funny because technically the French are barbarians. The Franks were Germanic barbarians to the Romans, so it's just funny to me because the French loves to style itself as super Latin and all that jazz, bro. And a lot of Germanic tribes really tried that. But yeah, bro. Romans do not care. Obviously, Romans don't exist anymore. But still, it's just funny to me because at the end of the day, that's what the French are. Barbarians originally.
4,000 men entered Lombardy nearly unopposed with Venetian reinforcements, while papal soldiers secured Emilia and Romagna. La Police moved to Veneto to confront the invading army, but the lack of infantry and funds forced him to retreat to Pavia, where a short siege dislodged him. By the end of August, most of Lombardy and Liguria, save for a few citadels, was freed from French control. We will continue telling the story of the War of the League of Cambrai and the Italian Wars in the next episode, with the battles of Novara and Marignano. So make...
Bro, I was able to freaking, like, keep up with what was going on. A lot of you said to me that this is so complex and so confusing that freaking hell, man. That it's hard for you to keep up. So far, I'm able to keep up, thank God. Look, man, if you made it all the way to the end of the video, go like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions for me, go comment down below. Thank you for watching and goodbye.